Hello and welcome to the first edition of our Fireside Conversations at the Africa Oxford Health Innovation Platform, a platform that supports African innovators to develop new solutions to Africa's health challenges. Each time, we are going to hear from a different innovator trying to solve a health challenge in Africa and find out how they became innovators and what motivates them. I'm Watu Amai from the Africa Oxford Initiative, and with me is Atherton Mutambwera, an esteemed alumna of the Said Business School and star African innovator in the health space. Atherton, welcome to our very first fireside chat on health innovation in Africa.
Wati, thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, Atherton, you're the founder and CEO of Hutano Diagnostics Limited. Tell us about Hutano.
So Hutano is a company that makes tests that look like the home pregnancy test or the malaria test. The only spin in that is we are doing it as a platform. So we are making a modular configurable platform that can be used for diverse array of diseases. The technology allows us to develop a diagnostic that does not need refrigeration during transportation and storage, and that doesn't expire after 2 years. And the start was an Ebola diagnostic where we are at the prototype stage now, and we're starting to work on a COVID test.
Oh, fantastic. Getting rid of the cold chain, particularly in rural Africa, is something that is actually very critical and timely.
Yes, we're excited about that one.
Yeah. And Atherton, you grew up in Zimbabwe. Give us a snapshot of your journey before Hutano.
So I grew up in a city called Gweru. It could be the third or the fourth largest city in the country, depending on whether or not you're from Mutare. And did my primary school and my high school there. Holidays were in the village. And then when I got an opportunity to go to undergrad, I went as far as I could from Gweru. And so I ended up in Port Elizabeth, where I studied pharmacy. And then between Port Elizabeth and Cape Town, where I studied the master's in nanoscience.
And the shift from pharmacy to nanoscience, what was the trigger there for you?
Creativity. I love pharmacy. But it's things. There was less space for me to be creative there. So, for example, a paracetamol tablet, if it's white, it's supposed to be white. You can't tomorrow decide to make paracetamol tablets that are violet. Your patient will be worried. But with the MSc, I was able to become creative and express myself through the work that we're doing.
So when you were growing up in Gweru, would you say you were already an innovator, or the spark came later, was triggered by other things?
No, we used to play some funny, silly games when I was younger with my cousins and my older brother. We'd pretend we'd made the cure for AIDS, play around with the pigeons in the garage. No animals were harmed. Things like things like that. But it wasn't as clear as that. I remember I had a little book where I used to draw out my more mechanics type things, and my uncle who raised me would have a look at them and would talk about it, but it wasn't that serious. More, a lot of the focus came in when I was now in fourth year for the pharmacy degree, and then the masters, and then after that.
Right, right. So how was the idea of Hutano born, and what was the key in turning it into reality?
So it was stages really. The first stage was in 2014 where we had the Ebola outbreak in West Africa, and the focus of I had to choose a research topic. And so my research topic became making a rapid test for Ebola diagnosis. And that's when I completed that master's research and did the MBA here at Oxford. And the focus was on taking that and trying to build a company out of it. And so the second stage began doing the mechanics of what does it take to build a company. And that was working we had a module that we had on the MBA called the Entrepreneurship Project. And together with Alex, Ndakuna, Christy, and Tony, we built what became the structure for what Hutano would be. And then moving it from an idea into practice, that was done with our board. And our founding board consisted of William, Glenn, Paul and Stuart. And with their contribution, we're able to take what was an idea and actually convert it into a business. So there's just different stages to it in terms of from getting an idea to seeing, okay, if this is rolled out, what does it look like? And then continuing to advance it. So started as an Ebola product, and then now it's become a company which is developing a platform. And then different products can be built off of that platform.
And what would you say were the key learnings? Because there you mentioned a few people, and it looks as though you are having conversation after conversation, before you actually got to putting something together.
I think a lot of the lessons were lessons around, I'll just combine the lessons learned in uni as well as the lessons learned whilst developing Utano. And I think one of the first lessons was learning how to listen to other people, even when their view is different to mine. The other thing is learning when I am wrong and learning when I am right. And I think those two are really important because I've been reading a book called Principles by Ray Dalio. He says that you optimize the system. He says nature is not kind, nature is cruel. He used the example of a lion eating a buffalo. If you think of that particular image, it's quite vivid. It makes you wonder why can't the buffalo live? But then if the buffalo lives and it's not eaten by the lion, then you're optimizing for the buffalo. You're not optimizing for the system. And so the different listening and learning when I'm right, when I'm wrong, has been helpful in terms of understanding what the system actually needs. And then the step that comes after that is to see how we can change our approach, how I can change my views to be able to get to the point where we're actually making a lot of progress. The other lessons with Hutano as well as the journey with uni have been around learning how to hold two different ideas in my mind, because that's another challenge that's there in terms of just holding two different ideas and continue to work with them until one proves true or one proves false. Um, and people and guidance have been really instrumental to what we've been doing.
When you say people, I mean, of course, one might say that's obvious. People are important. They are critical ingredient to sort of, even giving you motivation, helping you to see things differently, and so on and so forth. But that presumes a certain element of sharing your idea. And one might want to think, if I share too much of my idea, I might lose it.
Yeah, no, I definitely get that. I definitely get it. I think it's a fine balance, between knowing what information you need to trying to get to know what you don't know versus protecting the core of it. Any idea in its element has things that are unique to it and things that are more general to it. But I think the benefit of sharing the idea with other people is that we get to learn how other people see the idea, how they frame the problem, and how you can better understand where the gap is. There's an Afropreneur would say, he says that when they invest in a company, it's a group of that investor. His name is Idris. He says when they invest in a company, the first investment is to figure out what problem you're trying to solve. Mm-hmm. Not that when you get investment, you're supposed to not work, but that's the thing. The work you're doing is essentially figuring out what the problem you're trying to solve is. And you can't do that by yourself because you only have one particular line of thinking that you have, but other people come in, ask you questions and help you to develop and to grow.
Right. And I'm just also thinking about your sort of your background training, your sort of foundational knowledge, and the ability to understand basic principles of what you're doing, your lateral devices, and so on and so forth. Because you told us you studied pharmacy and then you went on and studied nanomedicine. How important have you found that to be as an innovator?
I think the benefit has been particularly with the lessons, the science, the scientific method. How do you think through problems? How do you solve things? That's been definitely helpful. But I think I'll focus a lot more on the things that we don't learn in the book, the things we learn from other people. How to ask for help when someone needs help. Mm-hmm. How to be comfortable with people asking you questions, not because they're trying to distract you, but they're trying to help you. as well as how to build relationships and with people from different places. So those are some of the things that I've benefited from along the journey. But I think one of the things that has also been important has been access, particularly because academic institutions attract a lot of very different people. So in that comes people who are interested in what you are doing and who'd devote their time to your work. I'll give an example of my time here at Oxford, where I spent a lot of time with Kevin Marsh, who's the director of the Africa Oxford Initiative. 3-4 times would meet and spend an hour and a half with a chalk and not a chalk, with a marker and a board, and would actually sketch out what Utano is supposed to do, where the problems are, where the advantages are, and how we do that. So things like that, being able to be in a university environment has been helpful to get access to really smart people who've helped me to think through what we're trying to do.
Chalk is fine, Atherton. Some of us learned on blackboards with chalk.
So did I. So did I. And being the teacher's pet and rubbing the board, so did I. It's just that at that particular moment, there was no chalk inside. It was a marker and a board.
Yeah, so what you're really bringing out there is a very important aspect. So you're actually talking about mentorship.
Yeah.
Can you tell us, can you elaborate more on the question of mentorship as, when you're becoming an innovator?
There are a lot of things that we need to learn. At least there are a lot of things that I need to learn. And I can either do it the hard way, which is make the mistakes that I need to make to be able to learn it, or I can lean on people that have done this before. And these are people, so it's standing on the shoulders of giants, because then they help us to be able to avoid a lot of the mistakes that we make. An example is a lot of the work we do in the lab. We develop a protocol for what we want to do and then share it with William, who's on our board of directors. He's also a professor here at Oxford. Mm-hmm. And he always comes back and says, this is good, this is bad. And then he explains it. I think one of the things that was there was around how do we introduce innovation in our research pipeline? And realizing that if we try to do everything all at once, if everything fails, we won't know what the problem is. But if we do stepwise increments in our technology and our innovation, it means that we're able to have an understanding of what parameter did we introduce that changed things. So that's been something that's been really helpful.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And earlier on, you mentioned that when you're working on your MBA, you had a module that was called entrepreneurship, and you worked on a project in that module. And we know that the Said Business School is a world-leading institution in entrepreneurship and innovation studies and so on and so forth. What would you say was one of the big lessons, or one of the main attributes, or the most useful thing you took away from your entrepreneurship module?
It was the team. It's interestingly enough, today, if I have a problem with, I'm learning how to be better with things like financial modeling. But if I have hit a big wall with financial modeling, I reach out to Alex and ask him for help. Mm-hmm. Help me think through this. If it's something with design, for example, I reach out to Tony. She helps me with design, how to make things much easier to understand. So that for me, I think, has been the biggest take home, which is access to people, to peers who understand what we are trying to do and really wish us well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So there comes again the question of mentorship. And in this case, you're talking about peer-to-peer mentorship, which clearly plays a very important role, because you're working with people possibly who are in the same space as you, who are thinking about the same problems, and having that network and those allies obviously gives you quite a boost. But I would want to think that nonetheless, even with this sort of fabulous network, access to people in Oxford, etc., as an innovator, one ultimately faces pushbacks time and again. How have you dealt with pushbacks?
I think the way that I've been trying to understand it is a thought experiment called Schrodinger's cat. I don't know if you come across it.
Well, tell us about this Austrian cat. It's really different from the Zimbabwean cat.
It's different from the Zimbabwean cat. So Schrodinger's cat is about, it's a thought experiment, right? I think it's the field of quantum physics, if I'm not mistaken. The idea is that you take a cat and you put it in a box. And then you also take some poison, you put it in the box as well, and you seal the box. You're not allowed to cheat, but because you're not allowed to cheat, you can't listen to hear if the cat is still alive or not. By just looking at the box, the sealed box, the cat is both alive and dead at the same time. And so that's how I've been thinking about at least my journey with being an entrepreneur, in that the company is alive and dead at the same time. Alive because of the immense possibilities that are out there. You know, if you're trying to project how much revenue this company is going to have, how much impact it's going to have in the community, you get excited, you know, you literally start to shake with excitement. But at the same time, you're unable to make a finished product because you've broken that down into two stages, which is make the prototype, then raise more funding, and then make the product.
Mm-hmm.
So it's because your resources, you've also tried to be efficient with the resource spend as well as accumulation. So that's been quite an interesting thing. And so a lot of the challenges, I think, a lot of the challenges on my end have been within my own head because of either leaning too much towards the cat is dead rather than the cat is alive, and building all manner of potential scenarios that never really come out to be. Of course, the external pushbacks and challenges. For example, fundraising, raising funds for a company. It's always quite an interesting journey. You meet the most interesting people, but it takes about 6 months to raise a round of investment outside of COVID. So you can imagine the every day of those 6 months, you're probably biting on your nails and wondering what's going to happen, thinking about can we make salaries next month end or not? And then other challenges, for example, if something is not working in the lab, how do you then think through it and try to get to the easiest? How do you plot a way forward that allows you to get to the milestone? So it's a different way, for example, when I was doing research within the university versus outside the university, whereby the approach is, what is the next inflection point? Inflection point being the thing that's going to increase the value of this company. What are the least steps we can take to get to that inflection point? That's important because then we're using less resources to be able to demonstrate value. That's not to say we are not being diligent as scientists, but it's a totally different approach to things.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So that sort of mindset thing, dealing with challenges, it's something you constantly do, but learn how to do them better over time, which is very reassuring, because I would imagine, being an innovator is exciting as well, because there's always action, something happening, at least in your mind anyway.
Yes, but the support from more experienced people, it's incredible. The gray hairs are very helpful because they help you to think through what you're actually trying to do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And what would you say the Africa Oxford Health Innovation Platform means to you?
It means access to me. It means access to the different fellows that are going to apply and be accepted onto the program.
Mm-hmm.
Access, and we've been discussing about the different forms of access since we started having our conversation. The first form of access is access to really smart people, smart researchers within the Oxford environment. Because whenever people apply and then they proceed to the next round, they'll have access to researchers, professors who have done a lot of the things that they're trying to do, or at least can help them do it in a much more efficient way. It means access to peers, because as we said, peer-to-peer support is really helpful. I learn a lot from my peers, people who are starting companies, people I was with on the MBA, as well as people that I meet as we continue to build Hutano. And then it also means access to really world-class institutions. An example is Said Business School, which you spoke about earlier on, which is here at Oxford. And Said Business School is quite unique because its focus is doing good and doing well. So they're talking about not just having a positive financial return on investment, but how do you as a company have a positive return on impact, be that in the community or how you're measuring impact itself. So I think that's for the people that would be applying for the program, I think that would be quite groundbreaking for them. It might allow them to grow at a faster pace and get a lot more exposure than they ordinarily would.
And that sort of linkages to the sort of global environment and global thinking and so on. Yeah. Okay, fine. So as we draw to a close, Atherton, what is the one thing you would like any emerging African innovator who's been listening to you to take away from this conversation?
Two things, if I may.
Yes, please.
So the first is to definitely apply for the program. I think it's an amazing initiative. And the second is that necessity is the mother of invention, and the need on the African continent is great.
Right. All right, then. Thank you, Atherton. And for more information on the Africa Oxford Health Innovation Platform, please visit our website. We'll be back soon with another edition of our Fireside Conversations on Health Innovation in Africa.